Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to my informative speech. Did you know that the national parks are the United States' greatest attraction? It's true. According to attendance statistics, they drew more visitors to national parks than the NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, and NASCAR combined. As a hiker, camper, and a lover of nature, I definitely appreciate that love for our national parks. I was surprised to find in my survey of my class that almost half of them had never been to a national park. And today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our national parks, how they were created, and who is responsible for them. The first national park in the United States was created in 1872 by the Yellowstone Act when Ulysses S. Grant signed it in. The idea of preserving the pristine landscape was actually thought up by the guys who discovered it. David Folsom, Charles Cook, and William Peterson in 1869. While it isn't the largest national park, Yellowstone is unique because it straddles 3 states: Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. The majority of it is in Wyoming, and only 3% is in Montana and 1% in Idaho. Of course, Yellowstone is best known for its 300 active geysers, the most famous of which, Old Faithful, erupts about every hour and a half. There's also more than 290 waterfalls and more splendors that make up this park and make this park special. Up until 1916, it was the Army's responsibility to take care of the parks and protect them. That's when President Woodrow Wilson signed the Organic Act, which created the National Park Service. And the National Park Service responsibility was stated clearly in the act. It said to conserve the scenery and the natural and historic objects and the wildlife therein, and to provide for the enjoyment of the same such manner, and by such means as will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. Today, the National Park Service is responsible for the protection of 131,000 square miles that make up 59 designated sites and 358 historic land sites. The work to preserve such a vast area of land is carried out by approximately 22,000 temporary and seasonal employees and up to 400,000 annual volunteers. These volunteers include archaeologists, landscapers, architects, curators, historians, and other professionals, and they carry out the daily tasks to protect and preserve the national parks. Now, the National Park System has an operating budget of about $3 billion, but a maintenance backlog of about $12 billion, meaning they're $9 billion short of what they need to keep up our parks. That backlog includes $300 million of wastewater upgrades to Grand Canyon National Park and $500 million that needs to be fixed at Yosemite. But, financially speaking, the upkeep of the National Park System actually provides a good return on investment. According to a 2011 Michigan State survey, for every $1 invested in the national parks, Americans receive $4 in economic return. So the national parks provide jobs and economic benefits today, as well as long-term benefits for future generations. According to the American Automobile Association, at least 85% of Americans say they've visited one national park, and 75% say that it is a must-see destination. The National Park System has recorded more than 13 billion visits since record-keeping began in 1904. The most visited park in the country was the Great Smoky Mountains in North Carolina, while the least visited was a small national park in southern Alaska, 19 visitors. With the popularity of the national parks on the rise, it is up to this generation to continue to work to make sure future generations can share in the same enjoyment as us. The best thing I did learn from the survey I gave was that more than half of us do intend on visiting a national park in the near future. And I hope the information in my speech gave you a good enough understanding of why the national parks are an asset for all of us. President Lyndon Johnson said when he signed the Wilderness Act in 1964, If future generations are to remember us with gratitude rather than contempt, we must leave them something more than the miracles of technology. We must give them a glimpse of the world as it was in the beginning, not just after we got through with it. Thank you, everybody, for listening to my informative speech on the national parks.